Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello, wonderful side quest people. And let's be honest, if you play games, who doesn't love a good side quest? My name is Phil Morgan, and I'm the host of a podcast named Deleted Saves. I'll tell you where you can find me at the end of this episode. But I'm here today to talk about a little game called Alan Wake. I know. The gaming world gave Alan Wake 2 a lot of critical praise, but I still think the original game gets left behind in the discussion of the now larger Remedy Shared Universe. I think that's the title they're going with anyway. But why Alan Wake, and why did this game stick out to me and become something of a personal landmark title? Come back with me to the distant year of 2010, and we'll unravel this mystery. Now, there is something you should know about me and my gaming tastes. My favorite game genres are role-playing games and horror games. Alan Wake the First is not a horror game per se. It's far more of a thriller. And despite Alan's quirk of quoting Stephen King, he's really more of a James Patterson guy. I got a copy of Alan Wake on the Xbox 360 to tide me over while waiting for another one of my all-time favorite games, and a genuine horror title named Dead Space 2 to come out. Wake's premise seemed interesting. I wanted to see what it was about. Right away, I fell in love with the setting. Middle of nowhere Washington State, a disgruntled writer trying to figure out why he has writer's block and his career is falling apart, and the background swell of the supernatural spilling forth like smoke from the barrel of a smoldering gun. See, the alliteration still gets me even now. Alan is a surly jerk to everyone, even his wife, as he was a wunderkind whose work was pulled from the slush pile at a young age, and his closest friend is his agent Barry, who pushed Alan to the forefront of the New York Times bestseller list. Now, years and novels later, Wake is tired, hungover, and having a severe case of writer's block. While in the village of Bright Falls, there on the premise of a vacation, but really there to see a psychologist who specializes in working with artists, things go very wrong when he and his wife take the keys to a cabin in nearby Cauldron Lake, and Alice, Alan's wife, falls into the lake and Alan dives after her, only to wake up a week later in a car crash, having written a novel he doesn't remember, and his wife is still missing while Alan is being attacked by enemies called the Taken. They're the citizens of Bright Falls, given over to darkness and evil by their own pettiness, hate, and greed. If this premise sounds interesting, it absolutely had me hooked from the beginning. And in some cases, Alan Wake hit a little too close to home for me. But I'll get into that. As you try to unravel the mystery of the novel and where your wife is, Alan will uncover a town very similar to the TV show Twin Peaks, with a lot of Twilight Zone twists, where the supernatural is just behind the brightly painted small town storefronts and workaday citizens preparing for Deer Fest, the local holiday. Wake acts like a maniac, running around looking for his wife and being threatened in turn by seedy locals and confused sheriff's deputies until an FBI agent gets involved, and at the center of it all is Cauldron Lake and the mysterious darkness that is turning the locals feral. Oh, and you can absolutely find snippets of a show called Night Springs to watch if you need a break from the mayhem. Remedy does love their little skits. But there are times the premise of Wake gets very, in a word, hokey. Obvious bad decisions he's almost forced to make, like he was the character in a story. The setting of a small-town logging community is fun until you've had your third or fourth gunfight in a logging camp. The flashlight mechanic is integral to the game. Enemies literally cannot be hurt until you shine a light on them to break their shell of darkness and make combat a chore. But the combat is secondary to the story. It serves well enough to get the player from points A to B to uncover this deeper, believable supernatural story. The kind of supernatural that doesn't rely on jump scares or drooling monstrosities, but is instead about dread and panic for a loved one. But as I said, Alan Wake is a jerk. He's not a likable protagonist and may be unreliable as a narrator. And that is what made it stick for me. He was a real dude in a weird situation. Not a selfless macho hero or a clueless dope bumbling through survival scenarios. By the end, Alan realizes he's a scumbag and is finally able to be self-sacrificing to save his wife, even at the cost of his own life. There is a lot of fair criticisms of this game, and I've listed a few, and its sequel has wildly outshone it in scope, story, and horror. But for me, and hopefully for you, Alan Wake is still worth the time it takes to play through it, roughly around 8 hours. And thankfully, there are modern updates to this game, so it is not stuck on the Xbox 360 days. You can play Alan Wake today. But let me add some personal touches here, see if I can sell you this just a bit more. Alan Wake stuck with me because, well, I've been a creative person my whole life. By the time Alan Wake came out, I had unsuccessfully been trying to be an illustrator, comic book artist, and writer, trying to do what I love for a living. I never had outstanding responses to my work, nor have I been harshly criticized. I've just got a lot of doors closed in my face by smiling people saying, thanks but no thanks. Crickets chirping has become the soundtrack to my creative life. I was angry, frustrated, broke, panicking, and being an ass to everyone in my life, especially my wife. Much like Alan Wake. There's a quote from journalist Christopher Hutchins that says, "Everyone has a book inside them," which is exactly where it should, I think, in most cases, remain. Yeah, I had a dude on Twitter launch that one at me in regards to a conversation I was having with an author they were friends with, who has, since I last spoke with them, had national success in their career as a writer. So sometimes artists and the people around them suck as people. I was playing Alan Wake and realized that this is how I was acting. I wasn't a New York Times bestselling author, but I was being the petulant creative, and I wasn't going to be successful in the traditional way. I was going to have to shut up and take a low-paying factory job just to survive. Maybe I didn't have the voice, the talent, the spark, or being in the right place at the right time that separates the wannabes from the people you've actually heard of. And certainly not the luck it takes either. Alan Wake, even its preposterous premise, was hitting too close to home. Wake even runs into some old heavy metal rockers who know the secrets of the setting, and man, if heavy metal isn't my favorite genre of music. It was all coming together for me. Believe it or not, Alan Wake made me rethink how I was acting and who I was as a creative person. And that maybe success wasn't for me at that time. Alan Wake woke me up to the need to be a better person, and to make my apologies before something went wrong in my single-minded pursuit of a then unreachable goal. That's kind of a downer, isn't it? Well, no worries. In the years since, I've gotten back on the creative saddle, and I'm having a lot more success than I previously did. And my relationship got better for it, too. Alan Wake, despite its valid criticisms, is a spooky tale that just hits different for me. It, in a way, explained a part of me to myself. We can absolutely try to rationalize it. How could a video game cause someone to make better life choices and career choices? Sometimes it doesn't need to be rational, though. Sometimes we just need a good ghost story to spook us. And sometimes that ghost story comes in the form of a video game that sits with you long after the credits roll and you turn off the system. If you're interested in anything I said and are looking for more game reviews taken from a more personal perspective, I can be found at Deleted Saves across every platform you can get your podcasts on. I've talked about Alan Wake more in depth there too. And if you'd like to give that episode a listen, I would appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter/X at Deleted Saves, and on Instagram at Deleted Saves Podcast as well. I even have a Discord channel if that's your sort of thing. All right, folks. I'd like to thank Matt for giving me a chance to talk to everyone today about Alan Wake. I really appreciate your time. And of course, happy gaming!
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.